Okay, let's now jump over to UFC Fight Night Vettori versus Cannonier. Let us begin with the main event with Jared Cannonier defeating Marvin Vettori by unanimous decision. The scorecards read 49-40, 49-45, 49-45, and 48-46, all in favor of Jared the Killer Gorilla Cannonier. A pretty consequential fight at 185 pounds. Mark, start us off. Give us your take.
That was, quite obviously, to anyone who has ever watched Jared Cannonier, the best Jared Cannonier we've ever seen. He mentioned that he made a conscious decision after losing to Izzy to up his output. Maybe it took him, one fight to really get it in order, because I feel like we didn't quite see that against Sean Strickland, but we certainly saw it here. And I did mention last week that Jared Cannonier was the better technical striker of the two, but I thought Vettori's pace and his pressure would be enough to carry him through this fight. But if you go ahead and flip that on its head, and Cannonier's the one with the pace and the pressure, in addition to the technique, that doesn't leave a whole lot that Marvin Vettori can do, and that's exactly the fight that we watched. Should Vettori have maybe wrestled more once things weren't going his way? I could see that argument. I've seen people kind of tweet that. I feel like the wrestling has almost gone out of Vettori's game a little bit compared to where it once was. Like, think about the Kevin Holland days. But aside from that, he kind of didn't have many options in there. And yes, his chin is made out of absolute granite, and he's an unholy level of tough and has still never been finished. And yes, he was landing some solid shots, himself at times. Cannonier kept trying that southpaw stance, especially early, and he was paying for it every time, so he fucking stopped finally. But all in all, that fight was all Jared Cannonier. He was ripping Vettori's legs apart with kicks. He was willing to walk into exchanges in ways that we've never seen from him before. He was willing to be in the fire and actually push a pace and go for it. And to me, that alone unlocked a whole new level of Jared Cannonier. And I bet Marvin feels the same way, because I don't think he ever expected to be fighting the guy that he fought in that fight. So I was impressed. I thought it was a fantastic performance from Jared, and that it was kind of the exact thing he needed to make people remain open to the idea of him getting a second title shot, because it's kind of easy to say now, like, you know what, this is the new Jared. He looks like a different guy. It's a lot easier to sell that.
Yeah, man. Omar, bringing you in, give us your take of this big win, statement win by Jared Cannonier.
I don't understand how any of us are supposed to pick things properly when people are fighting how they've never fought a day in their life. There was no way anybody was going to pick this fight properly unless you were like a friend of Jared Cannonier's. Like, there's no way. It was a great performance. He definitely had more volume than we've ever seen. Obviously, he broke a record that night. I think somewhere in the top 5 of the most significant strikes ever landed. I think he's number 5 now, if I'm not mistaken. And that's, I think, all in UFC. It's not even in the middleweight division. I think it's a good record to have, and a great performance to have, especially against the top guy. So, I thought Vettori's technique would also work in his favor, right? I know Jared Cannonier is probably a more technical striker as far as his distance management, but Vettori's got some good fucking boxing, man, and he was throwing some shots. The real issue is, man, I think he got caught multiple times, and I don't think he ever really got out of that haze. I just think Vettori is too goddamn tough for his own good. He got hit with shots that human beings should not be getting hit with. And a lot of them. And by the end of that fight, Vettori's face was absolutely disfigured and completely mangled. I just don't think he was able to fight as well as he could have once he started getting hurt. And that's completely noticing that he was still very much trying to win that fight, trying to keep going, standing up, trying to throw shots, landing from time to time. But Vettori was always trying to just stay in the fight, stay there, as opposed to really having the ability to win that fight. Definitely the most dominant performance I think we've seen from Jared Cannonier, not, considering probably some of his earlier KOs and things like that. can he do this again? I guess is really where my problem is, right? Do I take this fight and go, okay, this is Jared Cannonier always, or do I take this fight and go, well, this is the yin side of Jared Cannonier, and him throwing one fucking punch around is the yang side, and I just have to flip a coin when he fights. So I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go down in the future. I don't know if this is like the new Jared Cannonier or if this was a one-shot deal. I don't know, but I can say this: if this is the new Jared Cannonier, we really need to start putting some respect on his name, because that performance and that Jared Cannonier could definitely beat most of the guys in the top 5.
Sticking with you, Omar, here. Speaking of the top guys at middleweight, what do you see as being next for the Killer Gorilla, Jared Cannonier?
Middleweight is one of those divisions right now that is a pain in the almighty ass. And I say that because we have Robert Whittaker right now that I believe is about to fight Dricus du Plessis. We have Izzy kind of waiting on the sidelines to see exactly what's going to happen next with the division. But the reality is Izzy wants du Plessis, right? I don't think he wants to fight Whittaker for 100th time. I will watch it every day of the week, don't get me wrong. But when it comes to, the storylines and what sells and what the casuals want and kind of what's really going to bring in the money, Robert Whittaker, that fight has been answered a couple of times now. And it sucks for Robert Whittaker because the kid loses to no one else. But it's difficult to make that matchup again when you have questions about other people, when there are storylines now with real contenders, right? Du Plessis is number 5 on the middleweight division. And he's definitely a guy who you could see having a fight with Izzy and see that build up, right? The whole Africa bit, the whole line there, and how all that would play out. And there are things that are there. So it's hard to say exactly where these guys go because there's not a lot of movement right now in the middleweight division. I don't know what Costa's doing because I think that fight between Costa and Hamzat is kaput, right? Hamzat is supposed to be fighting Usman at this point.
Costa's fighting Ikram Aliskerov, the dude.
That's right. That's the Ginger Khabib.
No. The dude that beat Phil Hawes. The dude that knocked out Phil Hawes.
Yes. Okay. Who's Ginger Khabib? Which one was that?
Yeah, I forget who he's fighting and forget his name.
Something Pena?
But yes.
Yep.
Luis Pena.
I don't know.
No,
that can't be right. It was somebody we
No,
knew
I'm thinking
because
about
we didn't know
somebody else.
Ginger Khabib.
Oh my god.
We're not talking about Luis Pena.
No, we're not.
See,
What is?
I spent all this time learning.
That's
Ginger
Violent Bob
Khabib. I
Ross.
didn't actually learn his real name. Yeah, we don't talk about him no more. That dude went left in his life. Yeah,
Bad things.
no good. Anyway, yeah, like I said, hard to figure out exactly where everybody goes next. Jared Cannonier and Vettori as well, because you can't really drop Vettori too much either because they were both basically right there. So it's difficult to say, man. The reality is at this point, the movement of Robert Whittaker and du Plessis and whether that fight happens or not, I think is really what's going to set the wheels in motion for the rest of the middleweight division. Because if du Plessis wins, then Robert Whittaker has just lost to somebody else other than Izzy. But at the same time, it gives du Plessis the shot at the title, and then maybe we could have things like, has Whittaker fought Cannonier yet?
Yeah, he beat him.
Yeah.
Well,
I think he TKO'd him.
Cannonier was more competitive than most dudes were, though. To be fair.
Well, if we're gonna have to recycle things, which it might seem to be the case anyway, then that might be a fight that we might want to revisit if that does come up. Especially if we're gonna go with new Cannonier at this point, because then it's a whole different fight.
Yeah. Mark?
Yeah,
any other ideas?
I'll go to one that you mentioned, which is, and I agree that, du Plessis does have to fight Whittaker. Izzy is waiting for the winner of that fight. So it feels like Jared is not quite in the title picture at this moment. So I'll go to one you mentioned, which is if Paulo Costa can beat Ikram Aliskerov. I think that Jared and Costa is a big enough fight that we could go there while the rest of this is playing out. If Aliskerov comes out of that fight, my guess is Jared doesn't feel quite as jazzed about it as he might about a Paulo Costa. So we will see. In that case, then I really don't know. It gets a lot harder. But if Costa gets a dub, I could see that. And then for Vettori, I will say kind of same deal. A guy would need to win. But about a week from now, Sean Strickland is fighting Abus Magomedov, who's very good. But if Strickland wins that fight, I think you can go him and Vettori. That's a fight I've always wanted to see, and I think it makes sense at this point in time.